Hey kids, welcome to another week of online church. I'm glad you're here with me today. Now that hardly seems fair, does it? To take somebody's prize that they've worked really hard to achieve and give it to the person in last place. Is that what Jesus means when he says the first shall be last and the last shall be first? I remember when I was a kid and I was in school and we would have to line up at the door to go to the gym or to go to the library, and we would always fight over who could get to the front of the line first. We all wanted to be first in line. And one time my teacher, he said, took the person at the front of the line and he sent them to the back of the line, and then the person at the end of the line, he said they could go to the front of the line, and he said the first shall be last and the last shall be first. And I remember thinking, that's not fair. And it just didn't sit right with me. Even now when I read the Bible and the words of Jesus come up, the first shall be last and the last shall be first, it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And so I think it's good for us to think about, what does that actually mean? What did Jesus mean when he said that? And if we look closer, we will see that Jesus isn't really concerned about who's the greatest. He's like, that's not what's important. He's concerned about what's inside our heart. If you think about it, if you're trying to be the first in line and get there ahead of other people, and maybe you're even pushing and shoving a little bit, pushing people out of the way so that you can be first, you're really only thinking about yourself in that situation. And if you look in your heart, there's nothing but selfishness and then pride to say that you're the greatest. And that goes against what God's kingdom is all about. Now, the greatest command is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is equally important, to love your neighbor as yourself. And so if we're trying to put ourselves first and we're only thinking about ourselves, we're not thinking about loving others, and we're not showing love to God either. And loving God and loving those around us is where greatness can be seen in God's kingdom. I think Jesus explained it to the best to his disciples. They were traveling on a road and his disciples were fighting over who was the greatest, and they were arguing back and forth. And Jesus, he asked them, he said, what were you talking about on the road? And they were embarrassed. And of course, Jesus knew. He knew what they were talking about. And he said, you know, if you want to be the greatest in God's kingdom, if you want to be first, then you need to be the servant of all. That's where true greatness comes from, is from serving others and putting other people first ahead of ourselves. So if we're trying to be first, then we're going to end up being last in God's kingdom, because we're not actually following what God wants for us. And if we're trying to put others first, that's where true greatness is going to be seen in God's kingdom. So here's our question for today. How can you put somebody else first this week? Okay, kids, thanks so much for joining with me today. And this week, as you try to put others first, I pray that you would see the blessing of being a servant to the people around you. Have a great week.